As the band played, even construction workers were inspired by the fanfare. While they've been on the job for the past 4 months, Premier Bob Carr was today in town to officially launch construction of the 117-room luxury Crowne Plaza Hotel on the harbour.
This is a transformation of downtown Newcastle. On recent visits, I've been struck by the amount of renewal in the gracious old cliff-faced city.
And historical documents on Newcastle were among those buried by the Premier in a time capsule. He then joined a tour of the site.
Having had the opportunity this morning to walk along the site and see the distance between the building and the wharf edge, it's quite substantial, and people will be very, very satisfied with that distance.
The $40 million Crowne Plaza is the first hotel to be built in Newcastle in 15 years. Developer Beckton and the Six Continents hotel chain behind the project. Wine guru Brian McGuigan and real estate identity Ray Robinson are among Newcastle investors who've raised the majority of the $20 million in equity. But an unnamed institution has already decided to sell up its $4 million share. Meantime, the Premier today also opened a new regional food centre, which is the heart of the honeysuckle markets. However, the cuisine complex may be forced out next year, with Newcastle Council planning to relocate its museum on the site. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News. The 16-year-old schoolgirl from Newcastle High had been walking home over this footbridge at National Park Cooks Hill around 2:30 yesterday. She was heading in the direction of Union Street when she heard footsteps.
All of a sudden she was grabbed from behind by what she believed was that person that she heard running. That person was a male who said that he had a knife. At that stage he then proceeded to touch her about the body and then he ran off.
The sexual assault occurred over several minutes. Police are concerned that the brazen attack was in broad daylight in a park that's popular with families and is frequently used as a shortcut by local high school students. Students at Newcastle High School have taken home notes to their parents informing them about the attack, which took place just across the road from the school. All pupils are being warned not to walk home alone. It's believed there were no witnesses. The offender is described as aged in his 30s, 173 centimetres tall, of fair complexion, solid build with light-coloured or ginger hair. He was wearing a light blue T-shirt and a baseball cap. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News. For most teenagers, a first car is a step towards independence, but inevitably some are possessed by feelings of immortality.
Yeah, just when you get your licence, you got so much freedom. Just physically being able to drive that fast and just have so much fun.
17-year-old Nathan Blackmore, seen here with Dad Greg, is lucky to be alive. Last Friday night, he and 3 mates were in their Suzuki 4-wheel drive. A friend behind the wheel lost control on the steep Powell Street at Charlestown. The car became airborne over a garden wall and careered down an embankment. 1 teenager was hospitalised. Nathan says he wanted to tell the driver to slow down but held his tongue. He has this advice to fellow teenagers who find themselves in a similar situation.
Just it's hard to speak up when you're peer pressured, but you just for your own life you just have to stand up and say stop.
In the case of Nathan's accident, it seems the road itself may partly be to blame. Local residents have complained to council about it for the past 6 years.
We had a big reduced speed sign up there and it fell down. It was down for about 6 months. I was continually calling them, trying to get them to put it back up, and they came and picked it up and took it away and never replaced it.
It was this section of the smelter in which the man died at the end of night shift just after 5 this morning. The man, an electrician, was working on an overhead crane, but the reason for his death is still under investigation.
At this stage we're still in fact-gathering mode, and it'll be some time until we've got all that together.
It's the first death at the Tomago smelter in its 20-year history.
We are in a state of shock, and people are sort of walking around saying, that this is the worst thing that's ever happened on site.
Staff were rallied at lunchtime so they could be told what had happened. They then offered a minute's silence and, in a true gesture of mateship, gave a financial pledge to the dead man's wife and his 2 children.
Every union member on site has pledged a $50 donation out of their pay next week, which we feel will help our members' family over this interim period.
Together with internal and work cover investigations, a coronial inquest will be held to determine exactly what happened. As a further mark of respect, workers went home this afternoon early, but they'll be back on the job with the first shift starting at 7 tomorrow morning. Matt Carden, NBN News.
The Leonid meteors are cosmic debris left in the wake of the Tempel-Tuttle comet. They've been circling the Sun for 300 years, but on Monday morning the Earth will cross into their orbital path, our atmosphere engulfed in a meteor storm. Particles the size of a grain of rice will burn up after travelling at speeds exceeding 71 kilometres a second.
Very, very fast, hellishing fast. They're travelling at around about 71 kilometres per second, which is around about 70 times as fast as a rifle bullet.
You'll be able to witness the storm from your own backyard, but you're better off to be away from the city lights.
Between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, it will be high up in the northeast.
The peak storm period will be around 4:30 a.m. In 1833, the people of Paris witnessed a Leonard storm where an estimated 200,000 meteors blazed across the sky every hour. Many believed it was the apocalypse and ran screaming through the streets. And if you miss this historic galactic light show, there won't be another one until the year 2098. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News. The 155-hectare site off Lenigan's Drive near Minmi is known as The Tank and is owned by mining company Coal and Allied.
It is absolute key habitat for a lot of bird species. There's bat species, we have amphibians up there, including the green and gold bellfrog, which is threatened under Commonwealth legislation.
Developer Colin Chapman wants to buy the land to create 240 rural lots.
3,000 square metre lots, where only 1,000 metres of that can have the surface of the land disturbed and the rest is retained.
Total development would cover 24 hectares with the creation of a 500-metre wide green corridor spanning the length of the site. But environmentalists say flora and fauna will still die.
Because it is in fact the last peninsula linking the freshwater Hexham swamp with the dry forest. So what that creates is a migratory corridor for the wildlife.
We're really pleased to hear from the Conservation Council because their concerns are very similar to our own.
It's now up to Council to decide whether it will rezone the site. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
The $95 million plant will produce sodium chlorate, a bleaching agent to be used in the paper industry. And while it will create 35 permanent jobs, not everyone has welcomed its approval.
The waste produced in the production is also highly toxic. That waste will have to be transported from the site.
We deserve a study done on our health before anything else comes.
But that won't be necessary, according to Muswellbrook Council.
But this is a closed circuit system, and I don't believe that it will have any adverse health effects whatsoever. And I've also got sufficient confidence in the government to know that they wouldn't let it go ahead if they thought it did either.
Meanwhile, public comment is still being sought for a controversial proposal to truck Newcastle and Sydney waste to the disused Ravensworth mine site near Singleton. If the facility is approved, it will be a major economic boost to the region. Singleton Shire Council stands to gain $1.2 million each year from the operation. But council says money isn't the only consideration.
We've always wanted the waste to be transported by rail rather than truck. We've also looked at the health issues quite closely.
A decision on the dump is expected by DUAP by early next year.
Alan Barker organises training for a living, and it seems to have crept into his leisure time as well. Already the coach of Newcastle Hunter rugby premiers, the Wanderers, he's been chosen to take on the same duties with New South Wales country.
Everything's a challenge, and I'm just, like players, want to test myself at the next level, so this is the appropriate step to take.
The Cockatoos won the Australian Rugby Shield in emphatic style at Armidale in August, and some might say he's joining the team at the best time.
I mean, some can say it's a good thing, some can say it's a bad thing, because it's pretty hard to improve on a team that's already won the competition, but we'd be looking to just improve the overall general skills.
While it's a big opportunity for Barker, he's quickly realising others also want to test themselves at higher levels.
I've had a few people phone me, yeah. It's interesting, but the word gets out pretty quick.
His first game as coach will be at Wollongong in February when the Cockatoos take on the Waratahs. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Mark Nelson White walked away from court today, cleared of charges that he obtained unlawful information while he was working in the Police Intelligence Unit at Newcastle. The 46-year-old was placed in the unit as part of his rehabilitation program for diagnosed depression and anxiety. But in July last year, he was accused of downloading confidential files relating to the May 2000 double murder of two Carrington women, Joanne Tetron and Susan Kay. Police say Nelson White was actually called up as a suspect in that double murder, even though he was cleared soon after of any involvement. Today in Newcastle Local Court, the charges were discharged under the provision of the Mental Health Act. Before dismissing the charges, Magistrate Steve Jackson said he didn't want to appear critical of the police force, but it was a concern that Mr Nelson White wasn't transferred out of the Police Intelligence Unit as soon as the allegations were made. He went on to say, "What does concern me is that the defendant was employed in a sensitive area of the police department in what was said to be a rehabilitation program. He was discharged on the condition that he undergoes continuing psychiatric treatment for at least 12 months. Helen Kapalos, NBN News.
For 21-year-old Carla Brown, working on the land is a dream job.
Personally, I don't think I could hack it in the city. I'm a country girl, and yeah, I think the people here are great, and I just think it's the place to be myself.
While 16-year-old Rowan Jenkins says farming is in his blood. It's a big call considering he's a long way from home on the Central Coast.
My mum's uncle, he's got a place down in the Southern Highlands, and I've always sort of gone down there and helped him out and just taken it from there.
The two students from Tokal Ag College were awarded $1,500 for a study tour after winning the Young Farmer of the Year award. And it's just the beginning of bigger and better things. Carla, who's just secured a job in agricultural tourism, hopes to one day help improve farming in developing countries in Asia, while Rowan says he'll begin his career as a jackaroo or station hand.
Just move up the chain from there, probably go to overseer and in the probably not too distant future, a manager of a property.
Agriculture in general has a huge future, like worldwide even, so it all starts right here, and yeah.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Ben Kennedy carried a shoulder problem to England, and the 3 test matches did nothing to help the big second rower. He saw a specialist today and hasn't ruled out surgery to repair it. Better news on his hand though, the broken bone expected to mend over time without the need for an operation. Off-field things look good as well, with the club turning a $1.7 million loss last year into a $600,000 operating profit. The $2.37 million turnaround helped by the grand final success, but the club was always heading back into the black before the premiership windfall. Boxing returns to Mayfield Ex-Services Club tomorrow night with 2 feature bouts. Pat Kennedy will take on West Sydney fighter Apa Nanoy in the heavyweight division, while the headline act is in the welterweights, where Chad Hollywood Bennett will be out to keep his unbeaten record intact against Sydney's Daniel Loader. And the Hunter Region netball team to contest the State League division has just been announced, with Newcastle and Charlestown-based players dominating the 9-strong squad that will contest the State League.
It might be up to 8 months before the winner of the contract to build 15 new Navy patrol boats is announced by the federal government, but that didn't stop a contingent of Newcastle business leaders and politicians today from mounting their own flag-waving campaign.
We've decided that what we're going to do is go down with a delegation to Canberra and put our cases forward on behalf of the Newcastle Hunter region.
The Newcastle delegation is hoping to convince Defence officials next week why Newcastle should be chosen as the site to replace the Australian Navy's ageing fleet of Fremantle-class patrol boats. One very good reason is that the $400 million contract will generate 700 direct jobs and up to 2,000 indirect jobs. Both ADI and 4JACs are vying for the Navy patrol boat contract, which has the potential to bring more than $300 million worth of revenue to the region. But what's even more at stake here is a reported plan by the federal government to centralise shipbuilding altogether. The controversial plan by the government could see shipbuilding centralised to one location in Adelaide, a move which could have major ramifications for the entire industry.
We're saying that we disagree with it and we need to keep our businesses going up here with defence contract work.
Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
John Tate believes that while Newcastle has changed greatly in the past 50 years, the public transport system has failed to keep up.
The public transport system as it exists now is reminiscent of the 1950s, when we had a major hospital at the eastern end of the city. That is no longer there. The major hospital is in the central suburbs, when insurance officers employed upwards of 80 people in the inner city. That sort of numbers are not there now. They're in different locations.
The Lord Mayor and his Transport Reference Group have come up with an $80 million plan to solve the problem. The rail line to Newcastle would cease at Hamilton North, with a transport hub for buses and trains to be built on the old gasworks site at Woodville Junction. Also being considered is this European self-guided busways network that would link the interchange to the city. The state government would be asked to pay for the project. John Tate says if the system isn't revamped, the city may wind up with no public transport at all.
The losses are mounting, the patronage is decreasing, and no government can withstand those losses indefinitely.
Father of two, Gary Lunn, was sacked once before by BHP when he worked at the steelworks. And once again, his Christmas looks grim. He's one of 80 miners at Moonee Colliery who'll be retrenched in a matter of weeks, after owner BHP Billiton decided to close the mine. Workers told on Friday.
It stinks, it really does. To do this to us at this time of the year, or any time of the year, is just a low act.
Plagued by geological problems in the past, mine management claims if the colliery kept operating, it would pass a $6 million loss this financial year. But the United Mine Workers Federation says it's all about how you look at the figures. It says in the year to date, the mine made a $6 million profit.
And the fact that we're being retrenched from a profitable mine, one of the last profitable mines I'd say, hurts even more.
The union's Ian Murray says BHP Billiton is bound by an enterprise agreement which states the workers won't be retrenched before next March.
They're big enough to carry this workforce. They're saying that Moonee's doesn't fit into their business plans. Well, that's okay, but live up to their commitments and then make their business plan from next March.
When retired gardener Ray Barnes lost his son to leukaemia 2 years ago, he decided to do something to help find a cure. He came up with the idea of a fundraising mower ride around Australia.
He was 33 years old and left behind a wife and 3 little kids, so I thought then that I had to do something and probably make me come to terms with the loss a bit easier.
Averaging a speed of 23 kilometres an hour on his 20 horsepower machine, Ray left Coonabarabran west of Tamworth in July, and 11,598 kilometres later he's arrived in Singleton. As well as raising $50,000 for the Children's Cancer Institute along the way, he's also qualified for the Guinness Book of Records for the most kilometres ridden on a lawnmower.
5,417 was the record, and we've done about 12,000, so we've got the Americans licked.
Ray mows his way to Muswellbrook tomorrow and will be home by Sunday. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The Junior Blues were keen to get on with things against Victoria, and why not? After racking up 310, the hosts had the Vic starting day 2 at 4 for 38. Keeper James Allsop finished yesterday in hospital and started today with 3 stitches under his eye. In contrast, Brett Erickson came off a top score of 104, but together they removed the dangerous Peter Dixon for 22. 5 for 54, Adam Crosthwaite and Aaron Connaughton steadied the ship, guiding Victoria to lunch. The pair put on 109 for the 6th wicket, but once that was broken, so was the team's chances, the Blues winning on first innings. South Australia was causing the ACT all sorts of problems, and watching on was State senior coach Greg Chappell.
Yeah, we've got a couple of these guys are on rookie contracts already with South Australian cricket, so there's probably 2 or 3 others that are fairly close to that level.
But the former Test skipper knows only too well how hard it is to make it all the way.
Talent probably gets you this far, talent probably gets you as far as pure Krupp level, but from there on it's hard work and intelligence and learning from your mistakes and learning from your experiences.
Newcastle's buses and trains are losing $20 million a year, a situation that no government can sustain.
There is no doubt whatsoever when the Conservatives get back into government, and that will happen one day, they will flog Newcastle buses.
Lord Mayor John Tate wants to cut the rail line into the city and run self-guided buses from a transport hub at Hamilton North. The $80 million plan is attracting support from the state government, who would ultimately have to fund it.
There needs to be a consolidation in a hub somewhere, and Woodville is the place where it should go.
Not just inner Newcastle, but the middle ring of suburbs, the outer suburbs, as well as Lake Macquarie and people who live in Beresfield and Maitland, because it affects everybody, and if we can enhance that system, we'll certainly do a lot for the Lower Hunter.
The Hunter Development Minister says the future of the plan depends on Newcastle showing a united front.
The Premier indicated some time ago that he would see what the views of the Newcastle people were and the Hunter region before any final decisions were made.
In the meantime, the losses continue to mount. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Perth Glory are already on the attack and they're not even here yet. United fans have been spurred on by this newspaper advertisement published today. Perth Glory challenging Novocastrians to break the NSL attendance record. And although United are hoping for a record crowd, it's the points they're after.
Perth are definitely the benchmark both on and off the field as far as the NSL is concerned, there's no doubt about that. But we'll take the 3 points first and a nice large crowd as a bonus.
United hope to continue their unbeaten streak this Friday night, but it will be their toughest challenge yet, taking on the competition leaders. Although Newcastle has the home ground advantage, their biggest game of the season so far has come at a bad time. Along with the loss of defender Chris Zoricic and Joel Griffiths through 1 week suspensions, there are doubts over the fitness of several players.
We've been very fortunate up to now.
with injuries and suspensions, or the lack of them. We've said all the way along that there will be them, and we just have to cope with them when they come. Obviously, we would have preferred it if it wasn't against Perth Glory, but...
Ian Crook announced the squad of 17 today, with one to be omitted. Captain Matt Bingley is struggling with a hip flexor injury and won't be cleared until tomorrow night.
And hopefully I'll be able to train tomorrow and see myself fit for Friday.
Milan Blagojevic is also in doubt with a hamstring injury. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. New South Wales took on defending champions Queensland in one of the best games of the tournament so far. The Blues started the two-day game strong. Luke Dudman and Rhett Lockyer holding New South Wales to 2 for 134 at lunch. Blues skipper Jared Burke was a strong performer, caught out on 104, while hometown boy Mark Faraday was caught and bowled after notching up 48. But by mid-afternoon, the Blues were starting to feel the Queensland attack with 6 for 220. Brett Erickson and Jason Krazier formed a strong partnership, both producing big hits, ending with Krazier caught in the outfield. Despite Queensland's bowling being a little wide of the mark, the Blues were all out for 272. Queensland went into bat just before stumps, replying with none for 4. Play will resume in the morning. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
With a target of 272, any chance of an easy chase was spoilt by New South Wales quick Adam Fleming. Loose Blues fielding allowed the visitors to sneak some early boundaries past the infield, particularly off the bowling of Daniel Christian, before Rhett Lockyer put his body on the line, spoiling the Queensland momentum. Nick Kruger was the next to fall, becoming the victim of Fleming's second stumping, chalking up 24 runs off 44 deliveries. With Queensland at 2 for 40, skipper Craig Phillipson stepped up to the crease briefly, but Fleming's attack made sure he became the third to walk, caught behind by James Allsop. At lunch, Queensland was turning to its lower order for answers, heading into the sheds at a nervous 8 for 95. Blues coach and ex-Sheffield Shield cricketer David Freedman says, besides showcasing the game's future talent, the series has other merits.
Obviously, talent can only get you so far, and we're trying to teach them a lot of off-field skills as well. Like fending for themselves for a couple of weeks away from home is always an interesting experience for 18-year-old guys.
Play resumes on Saturday, when New South Wales will face up to Western Australia at Newcastle's #1 sports ground. Steve Mount, NBN News.
On Tuesday, 55 Travelland staff in the Hunter were told they no longer had jobs after 5 stores, which were once subsidiaries of Ansett, were closed. But by the next day, some workers, such as Andrew Minto, were given a new offer after 4 outlets were reopened as Travel World.
Bit of a roller coaster ride after, the emotions of, finding out you didn't have a job and then wondering what the prospects were and so many people out of work to finding out that night that, I had a job.
Helga Saxara, who's well known from the former Jay's Travel stores, is the new owner of 3 of the Travel World outlets at Belmont, Garden City and Charlestown Square.
We've been a long-standing Hunter operation and it is in our control. It is not a large, massive group, and we would like our clients to come back into our doors because we're here and up and running.
And there's some more good news for the former Travelland workers. While it's still early days, administrators say they're now likely to get their full employee entitlements. The only Travelland store which now remains closed is in Hunter Street.
Trying to relax this morning, there was little the 18-year-old could do to take his mind off the biggest game of his short career.
Really nerve-wracking, but exciting as well.
Told of his inclusion only yesterday, the teenager didn't think Ian Crook would hand him a chance so quickly.
I actually thought he was just taking the mickey out of me at first, but then it sort of sunk in.
But it's not Martin's inclusion that has raised eyebrows, rather that of Anthony Surgeon. The experienced midfielder hasn't played a top-grade game all season and doesn't train with the team full-time due to his teaching commitments. But Crook thinks he's tailor-made for the position.
Serge is a good finisher, got a habit of scoring goals, so hopefully he'll maybe nick one or two tonight.
The loss of Joel Griffiths and Chris Zoricic to suspension forced Crook's hand in selection, but he thinks Surgeon will work well behind a new striking pair that now includes Travis Dodd.
I'm confident he'll do us a good job. He's similar to Joel in terms of he's got pace and very direct, and yeah, hopefully he might spring a surprise or two.
Captain Matthew Bingley and Milan Blagojevic have both overcome injury concerns to take their places in the side. Thoughts now turn to how the newly laid turf holds up on Marathon Stadium and how the team fares against the best in the league.
There's no pressure on us, you know. Perth have now won 8 out of 8. Nobody's expecting us to get a result against them. Perth are expected to go on their merry little way, and so let's just go out there and have a real go.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. As players took a day off, so did two of the men who'll pick the Australian under-19 team to contest the World Cup early next year. Both adamant, though, that this year's squad will be one of the strongest ever.
But I think this team that we're picking at the end of the championships and being announced next Friday night at the dinner will be a very competitive one.
Wayne Phillips certainly hopes so. As caretaker of the Australian Academy since Rod Marsh left, he'll coach the team.
I think it's comparable to what we've had before. There are some standout players, but the general depth is pretty even. And look, I'm very comfortable with what I see here in Newcastle.
He's also earmarking players for the rare chance to crack the famed Australian Cricket Academy. However, just what role the Academy will now play won't be known until after today's ACB meeting in Melbourne, with the sports governing body aiming for a restructure of its development system.
I'd like to be able to. I can't, unfortunately. I understand it's being tabled at the Australian Cricket Board meeting today. So as a result of that, I'm sure there'll be some recommendations.
Play in the 19s Championship continues tomorrow.
Members of the Hunter Organisation for Peace and Equity gathered on the Newcastle foreshore to demonstrate their opposition to Australia's treatment of refugees. A street theatre performance highlighted their main concerns. Posing as boat people, the actors were taken out of detention and were welcomed to the country. Their message was loud and clear. The President of the United Nations Association of Australia, Margaret Reynolds, attended the rally to support those concerned about Australia's current refugee crisis.
It's been a controversial issue in the lead up to the election, but now the election is over, we have still got the problem. Just because there's an election, asylum seekers didn't go away.
Complaints to the federal government were also written by those attending the event. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. It was the Port Stephens Pearl Farms proponent Australian Radiata up against hundreds of outraged locals, and everyone had the opportunity to have their say. The Dolphin Watch Association were also present. They say there is potential for offshore whale entanglement in the long lines. 94 hectares of Port Stephens waterways will become no-go zones.
It's a real navigational hazard because there's 94 hectares of the entire port are going to be taken up, and you cannot operate a vessel when you've got ropes like that. They can get just caught around your propellers, and it's a real danger to the vessel and the people on the vessels.
But Australian Radiata say small boats will be able to sail or motor unimpeded, and dolphins will not be harmed.
Every day or every second day, a pod of dolphins swims through the lease. They're not worried by the infrastructure under the water.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Dozens of ambulances rushed to hospitals across New Delhi early this evening after the attack. The attackers, armed with guns and hand grenades, burst into the red sandstone Parliament complex and started shooting shortly before midday New Delhi time, around 5:30 this evening our time. The gun battle raged for an hour as police and security forces converged on the scene. According to a cameraman who witnessed the attack, one of the gunmen blew himself up in an apparent suicide attack. Shortly after the attack, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee appeared on television to announce that he and all his ministers were safe. It's believed to be the first attack of its kind on the Indian National Parliament. Security forces are tonight stationed at the Parliament complex, as well as the Prime Minister's residence and other government ministries. While no one has yet claimed responsibility for the attack, speculation is ranging from an attack by separatist militants to retaliation for India's support of the war against terrorism. Matt Carden, NBN News, late edition.
Bob Carr has scoffed at BHP's accusations that 3 proposed steel mills for the Hunter will run its Port Kembla operation out of business.
BHP pulled out of steelmaking in the Hunter. They can't expect me to pass a law to prevent anyone else coming back into steelmaking.
BHP has told its Illawarra workforce that for every job created in Newcastle, 3 will be lost in Wollongong. The Premier adds that BHP actually plans to finish steelmaking at Port Kembla mid-next year.
If BHP is going to wind back employment in the Illawarra, that's because of their own problems and their own way of doing things. It's not because of someone setting up in the Hunter to produce specialised steel products.
The New South Wales government will not be subsidising the proposed $2.8 billion Oz Steel mill, but would support the establishment of necessary infrastructure. Until now, only keen hikers have been able to appreciate the 360-degree panoramic views from the top of Tomaree Headland at Port Stephens. But now the upgrade of the 1.2-kilometre track, using pavers, steel walkways and stone steps, is complete. The Premier of New South Wales, Mr Bob Carr, today put it to the test.
It's unbelievable. The National Park Service did a first-rate job. This is fantastic. It is something that would bring any number of tourists to this region. I know of nothing in New South Wales that is a better view than this.
The upgrade has cost the state government $250,000 and the Premier says it's well worth it.
It's a reason for people coming up and staying a weekend or staying a week in this region, and that means good jobs in the local economy, but it's all based on careful protection of our natural areas.
National Parks and Wildlife staff have spent 8 years improving access, and now complete it allows people of all ages to come up and enjoy the view. Mr Carr also visited Anna Bay Public School to present a model of a 19th century ship, the Hannah, which gave Anna Bay, or Hannah Bay as it was known, its name. The ship sheltered in the waters off Anna Bay on its maiden voyage to Sydney. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
After routing Illawarra yesterday, it was Newcastle on the ropes at 8 for 39 early today. They had reached 115 when the 9th wicket fell, but that's when the real batting began. Ryan Mannix and Clayton Poole not only survived, they made it look easy. Together they smashed Newcastle past 150 and quickly into the 200s as they showed form with the willow that belied their number on the batting list. Poole was particularly aggressive against the Illawarra attack, smashing his way to an unbeaten 88. Mannix went for 60 in a stand of 117 for the final wicket as Newcastle set 232. Illawarra had little trouble gathering runs, but wickets were also falling at a steady rate. A mix-up in the middle costing Hugh Mackay his wicket for just one. Robbie Denmead and Chris Giorgio got stuck into the run chase though and applied the pressure to Newcastle's attack, adding 116 for the 4th wicket and giving their team a real chance of victory. They eventually fell just 1 run short.
Combining his passion for boats and art, Graham Gilchrist is rowing around the entire foreshore of Lake Macquarie, whilst capturing the beauty of the lake environment through his watercolour paintings. Since retiring from the position of Professor of Fine Arts at the University of Newcastle, Graham's life seems idyllic. Each morning he launches his dinghy into Fennell Bay and explores the creeks, inlets and bays of Lake Macquarie.
It seemed that I could get to places in the boat that I couldn't get to wandering the banks. Plus, I love being in boats.
And his passion for boats doesn't end there. He's building a 5.2 metre sailing boat in the backyard. When it's launched, he'll be able to sail the lake in a bit more comfort and discover new scenes to paint. Graham has already raised $7,000 for Canteen, which supports teenage kids with cancer. A selection of his works will be auctioned off this Friday night.
I'm hoping to raise $20,000 for them. At the moment, I'm a little over $7,000, a long way to go, plus a long way round the lake.
His exhibition will open tomorrow at the Lake Macquarie Art Gallery. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Upper Hutt Community Services estimates around 20 to 30 young people are sleeping in the region's streets or away from home at any given time. Fortunately, Casey Wilson and Nick Halverson are only acting. They're among 8 teenagers who produced a video as part of the state government's Art Start program, the subject choice being their own idea.
Well, we all just really sat down and just discussed it.
There's no youth refuge in Upper Hutt or anything. The closest one's Maitland and, we need one here.
Compiled over 3 weeks in conjunction with JobLink Plus and Tricorn Productions, The video shows the plight of two young people fleeing violent homes. It'll now be used to lobby for the funding of a permanent youth refuge.
We've got a lot of young people up here who are just basically moving from house to house on a continual basis. And so our youth refuge will give them an opportunity to have some safe environment to stay on a short-term basis until they're able to sort of sort out the problems they may have at home.
The budding filmmakers have also gained valuable skills they'd like to continue using.
In a movie. In a movie.
Yeah, famous.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
The excitement of children unwrapping gifts at family get-togethers, Christian celebration and visits by the fat man in the red suit are part of a Christmas phenomenon that for some can magnify feelings of loneliness.
I think because there's so much expectation that Christmas be a happy time and a family time, and when they don't have happiness or they don't have family or they have poverty, then that just increases their sense of aloneness and alienation.
In a bid to beat the Christmas blues, Lifeline today launched a list of 10 practical tips.
Think of something pleasurable to do each day. Begin, instead of worrying about everyone else up there, what can I do to love myself today? Write down one pleasurable thing, and it might just be sit in the sun for 30 minutes, listen to some good music, treat yourself.
Lifeline's hotline is 1300 131114 and phones will be manned over Christmas. And while the number of suicides in Australia has fallen by as much as 10% in 2 years, tragically Christmas continues to be a peak period, with men aged between 25 and 35 most at risk. Researchers are still puzzled as to the reason. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
It was at the Masters Games that the facilities at Lambton Pool came to Australian water polo's attention. Come the new year, it'll host the national men's team, keen to train outside a capital city.
Newcastle is close to Sydney. It has very good facilities. The accommodation is very close to the swimming pool. The people are very friendly and helpful. And these are basically the main reasons why we're here.
The intensive 6-day camp announced today also features fitness sessions at Newcastle University and is designed to bring a men's side radically changed since the Olympics up to speed.
It's a very young team, it's a very new team. Many former senior players retired.
The camp will also help develop the game's local ranks, with players like State Rep Nicholas Campbell and Australian squad member Philip Reid getting the chance to press claims for selection.
It's quite a young squad, and I fit in quite well with the rest of the guys. So I'm looking forward to, having a go at making the team, and whatever the outcome is, I'll be happy.
The coaches and all the team members get to have a look at you, and for the future, it's always good. Can't hurt my chances.
The Olympic champion women's side also looks set to train at Lambton next year. The men arrive on January 2nd. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Everyone loves the twinkle of Christmas lights, and thanks to inexpensive imports, it seems nearly every house has a bit of sparkle this Christmas. But some houses sparkle more than others.
And people put double adapters onto double adapters onto double adapters. They increase the flow, the current flow, and if the fuse is not the correct fuse, it could overload the system.
The fire brigade says it's easy to overload the system, causing sparking or an explosion, and one set of lights per outlet is enough. Also, be careful of strings of lights that have been tangled up because the insulation inside the wiring can break down. And Christmas decorations are also under the safety spotlight, with several recent cases of children ingesting small decorations from trees.
There was only one place United players wanted to be today, and it wasn't the training paddock. In fact, the team will rarely see a soccer ground for almost 2 weeks.
Cookies give us 5 days off, and then we train for 2, and then we have another 5 days off, and then we're basically back in it again. So, yeah, we've got a little bit of time off, which is good.
And what a way to end the year, sitting outright second and remaining the only side yet to be beaten this season.
I've been here for quite a while now, and it's exciting for me because we're used to being down the bottom.
Wilson has long been heralded as the team's workhorse, whose efforts go largely unnoticed. His teammates, though, don't miss them. He set up Daniel McBreen's goal on Friday night, but admits he wouldn't mind some cheer in the new year himself.
Be happy with a goal or 2 down the track. It's been quite a while since I've scored, so yeah, Santa, if you're out there, yeah, a goal would be nice.
The last time he scored was against Marconi in March last year for the then Newcastle Breakers. He came close to breaking the drought on Friday night, but remains goalless this season.
As usual, went over the bar.
You have come close in recent weeks, though.
I have, yeah. I think I'm just around the corner. I've scored a few training goals lately, so yeah, hopefully it's just around the corner.
The squad's next match is away against the Melbourne Knights on January 12. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Greetings, friends. The other day I was travelling down Hunter Street and somebody stopped me and said, "Will you pray for me?" I nodded and went on. The person then came and tugged me by the shirt and said, "Did you really mean that? Will you really pray for me?" I stopped and looked at the person and said, "What's your name?" They gave me their name, and then I said, "What do you want me to pray for?" And the person thought a while, and then a tear appeared on the right eye and just dropped down her cheek, and she said, "Life's a bloody mess. Will you pray for me that there will be light at the end of the tunnel?" Christmas tells us that there is light at the end of the tunnel. God is light, in whom there is no darkness at all. Jesus came that we might have light and have it all in all its abundance. God bless you this Christmas.
I hate Christmas shopping, but it's a chore that myself and many others have to do. But when I go to the store and see the lovely decorations and people happily buying presents, the mood somehow seeps into me and I calm down a little. Make the purchases, and with the sounds of Christmas ringing in my ears, go back outside to the car. But in the car park, I see a young man begging for food. I see headlines blaring about the war in Afghanistan and violence in the Middle East. And I think, which is the real world? The one I've just left behind in the shop, or the world out here where I am? And then I remember that Jesus Christ was born not so much into a tinsel town, piped Christmas music scene, but rather into a very messy world. And he was born into that messy world to help us to make the world a better place. So Christmas is a time for us to reflect upon the fact that we too must give birth to Jesus by changing the world around us, by loving one another and being prepared to forgive. May you all have a very wonderful Christmas.
It's a very popular race meeting. They let down, the day after Christmas, after having a big feed and a big drink, I suppose, on Christmas Day.